Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Boys Season 4, Episode 3. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, let's focus on the Seven as we get introduced. Well, Homelander publicly introduces the new members of the Seven, which I was wondering too. I was like, well, that's up to 6 now, so who's going to be number 7? But he's like, oh, I'm leaving that spot open for Ryan, which I think is so interesting because we haven't had a full 7 since season 3, and that was so, like, Supersonic got picked at the end of episode 3, and the Deep ended up returning, and then he immediately gets murdered that's in episode 4 of last season. So very short-lived full stock of 7, because prior to that, they didn't, because during the Stormfront season, like, Deep wasn't back yet, and even A-Train got kicked out. They were going to bring in the other speedster, but he ends up dying later on in the season. So, like, that was a very smaller group of 7. So, like, yeah, because when you actually think about it, it's like, yeah, like, from after episode 2 of season 1 up until basically season 3, they did not have a full, like, 7, and that was once again 1 episode lived of having that full roster. So I am curious to see, are they going to fill that void with someone else, or is it specifically going to stay open for Ryan? Which, you feel so bad for Ryan, because in that moment he's kind of, because I like it, like, at least based on the teaser, you see that smile on Ryan's face. You're thinking like, yeah, he's all about it because of the season 3 finale. But now, because of everything he's going through these past 2 episodes, he's kind of not enjoying this. Not even kind of, he's straight up not enjoying this anymore, and he's seeing a side of his father he doesn't like. I mean, his father literally chastised him at the end of last episode, and now he's got to be put on stage, and he's not liking it anymore. He's kind of seen the ugliest of it. I mean, you literally have one side of the crowd cheering for you, and the other side of the crowd is booing you, which irks Homelander to no end, because Homelander tries to pretend like he doesn't care, but he does. He's cared the most. He's the one that his public image matters the most, and he always tries to make it seem like, oh, I'm above it. These people are insignificant. They don't mean anything. They're supposed to be your toys, yet, oh, your toys are getting mad at you, and it bothers you. He's like grinding his teeth when he's looking at Starlight's supporters, and it irks him, but he tries to be like, no, I'm good. I'm sure he was thinking about that time he, like, had that, like, vision of, like, lasering that entire crowd against him. At least he didn't envision that this time, but maybe we just didn't see inside of his head because he's trying to be calm and collected. But yeah, that was kind of a no-go. I also love that Sage calls him out later on, being like, yeah, I don't want to be in the forefront. How I'm going to, like, enact our plans, like, the best thing about being like, doing some, like, duplicitous evil shit is you got to be behind the scenes. Being out front where literally millions of people have their eyes on you all the time, not conducive with that. But once again, Homelander's doing a double fold thing of, well, it paddens out the roster, but it also makes it a little easier for him to, I guess, always keep eyes on Sage, you know? But she even says, like, right, this is you getting me payback for, like, publicly disobeying with you last episode about how the Ryan thing should be handled. I mean, to be fair, he didn't fully take her advice anyway, because he showed up there despite it supposed to be his alone. To be fair, it's like, well, Noir and Deep kind of got himself put on that situation, so I guess, like, you were kind of, like, okay about it. But he's like, because she's like, you're doing this to punish me. He's like, what? You think I'm petty enough to do that? And she's like, yeah, I do, but whatever. So not only is she part of the 7, she's also in the costume, and she doesn't like it. It's like, yeah, it's a little, because he was like, oh, what's like, you got to stick up your ass. She's like, oh, what I got up my ass is this costume, along with it also being, like, you know, giving me camel toe. So at that same time, because Sage has stepped up, she, as I brought up previously, it's like Ashley was concerned in the last episode about being ancillary and redundant, and lo and behold, that comes true literally the next episode, where it's like, man, Ashley can't catch a break, you know? I mean, despite things kind of working out for her, they've also, you know, this job has always been a double-edged sword. She quit in season 1, came back for season 2 to take over Madeline's job, stuck it out, and eventually found her way to becoming CEO, replacing Edgar. But, you know, once again, she's just the face of it, really, is Homelander. But now he's passing that on to Sage, and now it's like, cool, they've got to keep her around like a mascot. You're like, oh, this might be the lowest Ashley's been. And she's like, oh, I'm going to quit after everything I've done. And the fact of the matter is, she's like, I haven't gone to the doctors in 3 years, these UTIs and stuff like that. She's got all this crap going on with her. Once again, as Sage reminded us last episode too, don't forget the whole pulling out her hair thing, because we found out in season 3's finale that she's wearing a wig because like she just has such little hair left. Which is so sad and such a stressful job. So she's thinking about quitting until the Nika thing happens later on. It's like, nope, she immediately shredded that, because it's like, you should quit, but Homelander's not going to let you quit. It's almost like, why you even need me around anymore? Once again, she's supposed to like keep the face of the operation, like she's the CEO and stuff like that. It's like, probably like Homelander will force you to stay, and it's like, knowing what you know, I can't let you out of my sight, can't you let you be anywhere else, so I need you here just so, like, because she's essentially their pet, once again, mascot, pet, and all that. But you feel bad for her because she actually wants to quit, which you should have, when you quit before, you should have stayed, you should have never came back. Your mistake was coming back because you enjoyed the power and position, but it's like, yeah, you're in too deep now to get out. You know, but yeah, going back to the Anika thing, that's so heartbreaking because she gets blamed for it because the leak came from crime analytics about the guys that were released who were accused of being responsible for the murder of the 3 Homeland people, the people on Homelander's team. And it's like they know it came from crime analytics, and they looked it deep, and he's like not paying attention. They're like, you run crime analytics. I almost wonder if he actually forgot. It's like, to be fair, he doesn't have Cassandra reining him in. So, I'm wondering, what does that team look like now post season 3? Because remember, like, Anika was like the only one that was left on the team because he fired everyone else because everyone else had very anti Homelander tweets or something like that. So I don't know if that roster ever got refilled. If it didn't you just kill the only like, there has to be other people, because if not, Homelander just killed the only member of crime analytics, because Deep ain't doing jack shit. So yeah, but it's like, she was like, no, I haven't talked, like, I'm not friends with Starlight. I mean, we shared an almond joy from time to time, but that's about it. It's like, okay, she admits that she did, like, Starlight had her do something for her, and then he immediately lasers her in the head. It's like, wow. Wasn't even Madeline Stillwell heated in the head. It's like, no, he just like, it's like he shot a bullet in her head. And that was traumatizing for Ashley, which led to her like shredding her her 2-week notice of sorts. It's almost like with this job, you probably wouldn't even want that. You'd want to leave immediately. You probably don't even want to just put your 2 weeks. You want to immediately like quit this job. But yeah, like I said, an all moot point. I am curious what she was going to say. It's like, oh, like she had her look up something. I don't know, like, what, I wonder what would that have been about? Would that have been correlation with anything related to this, or what? What? I'm so curious. Like, I wonder, was it like her dad or something? Because this is probably before this is definitely before A-Train gave them the evidence, so maybe she was going to help them out. I mean, it benefits A-Train because now that's been nipped in the bud, because now it's like, oh, now she seems like the leaker, but it's like she didn't do that because we know A-Train got that information. So I wonder what Starlight had her look up. But I mean, it benefits A-Train's, but it sucks for her because she's like this like very small like recurring character from time to time, and it's just like, yep, just killed her so casually. I was like, oh, I felt so bad for her. So. And the horrible thing too is they just like immediately Sage and Homelander just left Ashley's office. That was in her office, and she just got to stare at Anika's dead body. Just like, yeah, we got to bring someone in to deal with that. It's like, that's horrendous. Like, they didn't offer to clean it up or anything, because why would they? But it's like, yeah, just like, oh well, and just move on. The Deep himself is kind of going through it because just things are so stressful. He's stressed out, and Ambrosius is like, oh, you haven't cleaned out my tank, all this algae's building up, let's get away together, let's go on vacation. He's like, no, I can't really do that. It's like, you kind of don't want to be too far away from Homelander, because you are his whipping boy. You need to be there, easily accessible when he calls you. So once again, you also can't let anyone know, because you created this narrative that Cassandra lied about the whole you screwing an octopus thing. So you can't have that. I can't have her out in the open. I mean, to be fair, it's for Ambrosius's like benefit too, because the last octopus he got close to was eaten. R.I.P. to our boy Timothy. You know, so it's kind of like, yeah, you don't want to be in that main tank, because if Homelander finds out, that's going to be issues. It's going to be another, oh God, I'm going to have to eat you while you're alive, you know, so he is protecting you in the end. But also, I do think there is some level of him that's also embarrassed, because it's like, right, like, you know, his love life is kind of going down the tank ever since his, you know, wife left him, and all he had was Ambrosius, and now it's like, oh, that was fine and dandy, but now it's like, it's such a like thing of like, oh, I got to keep this little affair hidden, and just, I think it's just everything. So it was actually quite a shock when we got the ending of the episode with him and Sage. I think it's so interesting, right? What, she's the smartest person in the world, but it's like, yeah, you could be the smartest person in the world and have terrible taste, but it's just kind of like a, yeah, just let's do it. You're hot and everything. Let's bang it out over some blooming onions, you know? So he kind of thinks she's hot and actually thinks she's actually pretty chill, because she's like, hey, you want to like watch Transformers 2? And he's like, oh yeah, Shai's actually a good buddy of mine. He actually wants to put me in Honey Boy 2, but you know, the script's not there yet. So and she's like, oh, that's a shame. It's like, why this pairing? It's also interesting, like, who would ever, well, aside from Cassandra, because you were part of a cult and everything, sure, but I'm also like, who would ever want to hook up with him? It's like, he's a known rapist too, you know? So I don't, that's what I'm like, you just, you know, smart people can make dumb decisions. I'm not sure what that's implying, that thing, that silver thing that was on the, like, it focused on, it was covered in blood. I'm like, did she kill somebody? Like, what was that about? Are we supposed to know what that is, or is that set up for a later episode? I couldn't quite make out what that was. So, I don't know if that's something we're supposed to know what that is, or whatever the case may be. I'm like, that's such a weird pairing, those two. So kind of keeping with the 7, we have the whole situation with Firecracker still spreading her misinformation, and then also there's the whole situation with her putting Starlight on blast on camera, being like, yeah, I'm proud, you know, being a woman part of the 7, you know, and I didn't have to blow somebody to get here, which is like, you know, going into what I was just talking about, you know, Deep being the rapist that he is. But Starlight confronts her later on. It is interesting that, like, the only female that she had a decent enough relationship was with Maeve, and I mean, even that started off rocky. But even, obviously, there was also the Stormfront in it all, but it turns out Firecracker has a reason to hate Annie, and it's specifically because of their past. It's like, right, we were on the pageant circuit together, and you said some very horrendous shit about me, and you spread it around. Basically, I think the literal words was like, yeah, that I was ass gangbanged by the judges. Almost like, for a second, even I was like, wow, there's no way Annie said that. It's like, could her mom have said it? Like, her mom was, you know, she was a pageant mom, so I wouldn't put it past her. For it to be like, no, Annie is the one that said that, even calling her a fat slut. It's like, yo, Annie, holy shit. But I also agree with Annie, like, she's like, I was young and dumb and stupid. You know, she even said, like, right, my mom taught me to be ruthless, and I was. And it's like, yeah, you kind of screwed me up. Like, that's all I ever wanted. Because it seems like Firecracker, you know, like, it could easily be a thing of not only just reputation-wise by what Annie said. It could also be like, yeah, I was a very insecure person, and I put myself out there just for you to, like, destroy me like that. Like, that shot her confidence, and she ended up bailing out of the competitions because she was like, yeah, that's just going to, I can never escape those bad rumors. So for her, it's like, everyone looks at you as like, Miss Great, you're perfect, you're this and that. I'm going to make the world realize how much of a piece of shit you are, who you really are. And that made Annie kind of realize, like, wow, like, you kind of created your own future supervillain. You know, she's the anti-you in so many different ways, not just also in the political way and just the way she handles herself, but because her mission is to destroy you. I guess, like, very much like there is that direct parallel between Homelander and Butcher, that this is kind of like, she's the antithesis of you, so. And it's also, because even Annie had said, like, later on when she was talking to Kimiko and Frenchie, there was that conversation of, it was so much easier to blame Vought, blame her mom, blame all this and that for her, you know, but now it's like, right, this is something I'm reaping what I sowed. Yes, it might have been my mom's thing that taught me. My mom might have put me in this position and made me think like this and talk like this, but it doesn't change the fact is I did that. Because, especially because she's always been like, for her, it's like who she is now. It's like, I can't believe I ever thought like that or ever felt like that. It's like, once again, you were a teenager, you were a young teenager at best, so it's like, because you were like a preteen kind of at the time. So it's like, I mean, it kind of goes back to like what we deal with present day too. Should you be held accountable for the things you say? Like, even if it's something horrendous, it's like, should you be held accountable for that? And I think that's where we kind of get into this situation, because it also varies on what you said, It's like the whole thing of like, oh, can you getting canceled for something you said? It's like, oh, should I be canceled for something I said when I was like a teenager or something? It's like, like I said, it varies on what it is and stuff like that. So, but I think just, even on a professional level, like even looking at it on a more macro scale of like what Firecracker is going to do to try and destroy Annie, I think for Annie, it's just on a personal level, like, holy shit, like, I can't believe I did something like that. She didn't even think about it until Firecracker brought it up. So it's like that, the fact is that I have my regrets, but it's probably like so much of that pageant stuff, she has her own trauma associated with it. I mean, because I think it's an interesting parallel to episode 3 as well. Because episode 3 is the one where we got the flashbacks to her pageant days, and they tied that in with the whole Homelight situation, where Homelander kind of, she lost a lot of power when it came to Homelander. He kind of took back the team, and it's kind of like, cool, if you don't fall in line, I could kill a lot of people. You try to threaten me, I can kill a lot of people, including Huey. So there's that angle to it. But, her being forced to be on the pageant stuff, her hating it, and her having to play the role that her mom created for her, in conjunction with this being episode 3 of this season. So I don't know if that was done on purpose. It feels like it was, considering that was that through line of pageantry. Like, it felt like that was too on purpose to be accidental. If that was just beautiful serendipity, that's crazy, but it feels like that was constructed on purpose. Also, kind of circling back and staying with Homelander, I'm going to jump around a little bit, kind of closer to the end of the episode, the whole him and Ryan thing. Once again, he's coming so unraveled. To be fair, he's been so messed up and disturbed for so long, but he snaps on Ryan. He kind of says the exact same line he said to Maeve last season of, "Oh, William Butcher, I can smell him on you." And it's like, right, I know not only did you hang out with Butcher, my mortal enemy, you lied to me about it. And it's just like, one thing he doesn't like, it's liars. He's always hated liars, ergo why he murdered Madeline Stillwell, because he's like, he does not like liars. He doesn't like being lied to. But it's like, yeah, you do not have the best constitution for dealing with liars and people telling you the truth that you don't want to hear. So there's that angle to it. But I can also I can not understand, but I see where Homelander's perspective is of, you would rather spend time with the guy who did everything wrong, who said everything wrong. You would rather see him than be around me. How effed up is that? For him, it's like, Butcher is an effed up person. For one, he's a pathetic human that's dying. But me, I'm your father. We're godlike. Once again, he sees so much of himself in Ryan. Ryan is his legacy, because now it's like he wants to be everything that he never had in his life. He never had a father. All the adults in his life failed him. He doesn't want to be that way for Ryan, but he doesn't realize he's not good at being a parent. And he has had moments, those moments of humanity, those moments with Ryan where he's proved himself he could be, but he's just so fucked up beyond belief that he can't move past himself and his circumstances to be there for Ryan, because once again, all he sees is Ryan being a vehicle for him to kind of fix his own issues, his own daddy issues, by being there for Ryan. Even though you weren't there for a good chunk of Ryan's life. Yeah, you've been there these past 6 months, sure, but it doesn't take away from the fact is he grew up, like his, with his mom. So he is a lot more like his mom than he is you, and that irks your nerves, because Homelander is all about control. Even when he's giving control away, he always does what he can to wrestle it back, He just sees himself too much as the end-all, be-all, the alpha and the omega of it all, and he just can't see beyond that, and just like how much he terrifies his own son, because he's so used to people, because once again, he wants someone that stands up to him, and it's like Ryan is kind of be like, hey, I want to hang out with Butcher, but it's like, you're not willing to budge an inch on that, and it is kind of the interesting role reverse where Homelander said everything right last season when Butcher said everything wrong, and Butcher's doing everything, trying to do everything right, whereas Homelander's doing everything wrong. So it's like that role reversal is kind of there, but it's also like they're both. Whereas it feels like Homelander is strangling that humanity he has left versus Butcher, who's kind of giving in more to his humanity this season. Whereas last season they switched roles to some extent, and now it's like, yeah. So he like ends up like throwing a statue at a glass, and we had that good old, as some people refer to it as, like rightfully so, his Green Goblin moment, and I love it so much. It's like, oh no, you thought, oh, we doubled it up this season. Oh, it's just a 1-on-1 last season. This time it's a 3-on-1 because the glass being shattered this way, being the perfect representation of his shattered psyche. You're just like, oh, that's so good. It's such a good framing device for that. And you have like the one on the left and the one on the right being the angel and devil on the shoulder, the human versus the monster that he is. The human being like, right, you can make things right, be there for Ryan, where the other one is like, you need to get a hold of this, snap out that little last bit of humanity, because if you don't, Ryan's going to become weak like you, and he's eventually going to leave you and betray you. And then the top one is just kind of like, right, we need to get rid of all of this, like that. Like, humanity in you is wearing you down. You need to confront the past, which is what a lot of people are doing this season. I mean, it's come up a lot in previous seasons, but a lot of people are going through it, like Kimiko. I have to say Huey, because I was literally about to say Jack, calling him by his real name. And Frenchie, Kimiko, and Huey are all kind of dealing with the past this season. And Homelander, it seems like we might get touched on like the whole element of who his biological mom is, because that's been something that's never been touched upon. I mean, yeah, he was made in a lab, but you'd assume they'd still need someone's egg to make that happen. So you would assume maybe, but because there was a woman in the flashback, so I don't know if that's his biological mom, or whether that's someone that was like a nanny to him. I don't know if that's what that's supposed to be, but like, yeah, the red door symbolizing like his trauma, but also what he was, maybe that's where because we only saw the lab he was made in. We saw it from inside the room he was put in. That's all we've seen it from that angle. And, Vogelbaum on the outside, but we've never seen like the outside perspective of that facility. So it's him going home and having to confront the past. The question is, who is Homelander going to be on the other side of that? Is he going to finally snuff out all that, the things that have been holding him back this entire time? Is he finally going to let that go of needing to be loved and finally confronting the trauma and to just go full monster? He's already been a monster, even with some remnants of humanity holding him back. But once he gets rid of that, like full holds bar, he's going to be unstoppable, it seems like. So it's going to be interesting to see what the aftermath of that look into his past, what that dichotomy is going to do to Homelander's constitution. So we'll see. I also appreciate, staying on the Ryan front, I appreciate the game that he was playing was very like Mortal Kombat slash Injustice-esque. He was like very much Mortal Kombat fatality. So interesting enough, which also, because I didn't know, I knew that the comic, for one, I knew the comic was originally under the Wildstar? Or I think it was Wildstar, or was it Wildstorm? I can't remember. Whatever the case may be, the original print, because I know it eventually started going under the Dynamite Entertainment print, because I looked this up, but I didn't realize the original print that it was under the DC umbrella. Because, I mean, I'm sure like a lot of comic companies have those like subsidiary because I know like Vertigo, like being, and that's not even a brand anymore, is it? I think it's, but up until a point in time, like Vertigo was like an imprint under the DC umbrella. This technically was under the DC umbrella for a time. I think I don't think Dynamite Entertainment was. I think just the original imprint that published the first like volume or so. Either way, so just kind of interesting thing to think about, what I was saying with the DC stuff, but also like, right, Homelander is in the, I was also about to draw the parallel because he's in Mortal Kombat, so it makes you wonder that was probably done specifically like that too. It's also interesting because it was Lamplighter versus Crimson Countess, two characters that are dead. there's an interesting parallel there too, because like, well, how he kills Crimson Countess is like, well, she kind of died that way. I mean, it's like she was extremely fried because of Soldier Boy, but it's also interesting too because like Lamplighter burned himself to death too. So obviously, like once again, there's the Mortal Kombat aspect of he took his like his staff and like shoved it up her ass and it went out her mouth and was like, yeah, once again, very Mortal Kombat. Hit one of her teeth flying out of her mouth, and also like one of her eyeballs is coming. It's like, yeah, so yeah, there's that. But Butcher reached out to him. Obviously, he's working with Joe, which I figured he would because that's the only person he can turn to right now. Can't really turn to anyone else. Can't turn to Grace because she wants nothing to do with you. So can't even go above Marvin's head, MM's head. It feels so weird calling him Marvin now. I mean, a lot of people call him Marvin, so it just throws me off calling him by his actual name because I've always just referred to him as MM. So either way, Joe and Butcher came up with a means of, was it halothane is what they were going to use? No. They were going to, it's something specific they were using, but they were like, if we need to, we'll use halothane to knock him out, which is interesting considering that's the thing they tried to use against Soldier Boy. MM tried to use against Soldier Boy last season during YourNerdGasm. That didn't work. So I'd assume it'd work on Ryan. But it's like, yeah, he wants to knock him out and try to convince Ryan's like, Ryan's probably not going to be too happy, but what are we going to do? It's like, well, we're going to keep him under until we're able to convince him, because he's telling Joe, like, right, we're not arming this kid up to be like a match for Homelander. The whole point was like, eventually he might be the secret weapon. I'm sure that's what Stan was kind of banking on. And that's kind of what everyone was up to a certain point, but eventually, like, it's like, no, you know, because Billy's perspective has always been like, right, one day you'll be old enough and you won't have to be afraid of your father. But it's never been a thing of, let's immediately get you training so you can fight your father now. It's like, yeah, that's, especially considering, like, I think, especially from Butcher's perspective too, considering he was so young when he left. I mean, he was probably like a teenager, like probably late teens when he ended up joining the military and left. But, you know, he couldn't really confront his father even at his own age, so it's like, who am I to really ask some kid to do the same thing, especially when his father's even more of a bastard than mine is. So Joe kind of says like, oh no, I'm okay with that, sure, whatever you say goes, but you're like, that's bullshit. But we'll talk about that after we finish up. Like, Ryan and Butcher do meet and they talk. But, you know, Ryan asks him, like, are you afraid of dying? He says no, because Butcher's a butcher. He never wants to show any sign of weakness. And he has the cookies, but Ryan's not hungry. But eventually he tosses the cookies because he's like, I'm not about to drug that kid. Because over the game of foosball, they ended up having a really powerful conversation. It's like, oh, like, he got good at, I think, foosball and stuff like that, because he's like, hey, I played with Lenny. It's like, who's Lenny? My little brother. And all he says is he passed away. It's like, yeah, you don't want to get into the dark elements of what happened with Lenny's story, you know? And for him, it's just like, yeah, my brother passed away, and he has this real genuine moment with Ryan where Ryan's just kind of like, why don't you want me? And he's like, dude, I'm all kinds of messed up. He's like, I have this habit of, I push people away because he doesn't want people to be around him because he feels like he fails everyone because of who he is. Like Butcher, it's like, he even says like, I'm not mincing words. Maybe on some level Butcher looked, who knows if Butcher ever looked at himself as a good guy. He's like, probably looks at like, we are the good guys. Like, I might have to do some effed up stuff from time to time, and I told that line of anti-hero, but I am the good guy in my own mind. I don't know, like, because I could also see Butcher being like, I recognize the effed up things I do and recognize I'm a bad guy, but I'm gonna still do it regardless. I don't know, but this is the first time we've ever actively heard him say like, I'm a bad guy. But you know, Ryan's like, no, you're not. But he's like, I am. Like, the fact of the matter is, it's just he causes a lot of destruction where he goes, and it's just, for him, the time is ticking down for him, and because there's nothing left in this world for him. It's like, my brother's gone, Becca's gone, and he's like, before I go, I have to make at least one thing right. With all the things that I've done, I need to make at least one thing right, and that's making sure that Ryan's okay. And I think for him, that means the world to him, you know? So, Because when you, I mean, and especially with the people he listed, Ryan doesn't know this. Obviously, when it comes to Becca, sure, but he doesn't know about not only Lenny being passed away, that the circumstances under which Lenny died. He killed himself. And for Butcher, it's like the two of the most important people to me. I failed to protect them, and I think it's just as much. I think he wants to protect Ryan just as much himself as he would Becca, because he even says, how could I go out of this world not protecting the last little bit of your mom that's left in this world, and that being you? So not only am I owing it to your mom, but by keeping you alive, keeping you safe, I'm making sure some part of your mom still exists and lives on in this world. But, there's also the element of, he's also looking, I'm sure he looks at Ryan and Homelander's circumstances and sees him in his own father. And it's like, I couldn't save my brother. And he probably looks, because he saw that with Huey, like being like, oh, I saved you. Maybe he looks at Ryan as more himself. Whereas like last season, hey, by saving Huey, it makes up for me not being able to save my brother. By saving Ryan, maybe it's almost like I'm saving a version of me so that Ryan doesn't ever become me, which, Joe is even implying, oh, why didn't you dose the kid? Like, oh, like the kid, you want to put so much faith in him, but who's to say he won't grow up to be just like his dad? Which Butcher knows better than anyone. He himself has grown up to be exactly like his dad. Homelander, his father wasn't even in a picture, that being Soldier Boy, and he still ended up like Soldier Boy. So history does have a tendency to repeat itself. But it's still the element of Joe is coming from the perspective of, if you ask me, like, would I basically train up my son? He's like, you're damn right. And if my son died, I'd be so proud of him, yada, yada, yada. Which is so interesting, because him saying that, you're like, ooh, I feel the John Winchester coming out in this role. It's like, ooh. It's especially when you think about the parallels of John's relationship with Dean in particular. And then you like put that in, you contextualize that with the way Soldier Boy is in this. So it's like there's such an interesting supernatural parallel in a lot of ways. That perspective is like, because part of me's almost like they wrote that line for like I mean it's perfect for the show, just showing you who Joe is, because Joe represents who Butcher was, who Butcher's been for such a long time, but he's waning away from that. It's everything that Butcher doesn't want to be anymore, so there's that element. But there's also a subtext of, if you're a Supernatural fan, you kind of get a little bit of that John Winchester vibe with those lines. So it's interesting. Once again, maybe it's just the Supernatural fan in me like reading way too much into those lines, but it almost feels like there's some subtext of being like, oh, but if you're a Supernatural fan, you get a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge to almost like the dichotomy between John and Dean in that very conversation. But either way. So we have that element to it. We have the Kimiko and oh god, I'm blinking on names this episode. I'm so sorry. Frenchie angle to it, where they kind of go off on their own. I love that MM stuck having no one listen to him, because they kind of fuck off. He's like, are you guys going to leave without saying anything? And they just both smiled, gave him the middle finger, and bounced without saying anything. He's like, well, cool. He has to deal with that so much. It's like reining in this rambunctious team of misfits. It's a lot, I mean, it's not even like Butcher did it flawlessly. There was a lot of mutiny amongst that team, as we've seen in the past. Holy shit, I'm blanking on the character's name now. The dude that Frenchie is into this season. I'm blanking on the character's name now. Colin. I won't lie to you, I had to look that up really quickly. I was blanking on his name. I knew it was a C, but I couldn't remember. With everything with Colin and his guilt over it, and it's just, he wants to distance himself from Colin. I don't know if he was going to tell Colin the truth. It takes a lot of courage to do that. I mean, admit, you're like, hey, you're responsible for killing his family. This episode also confirms, I was like, because I couldn't remember, but I was like, yeah, wasn't there a daughter in the picture? He's like, yeah. And because I also wasn't sure if it was a thing of, oh, he killed your family. I was like, did he kill some of them? All? I was like, no, all of them. You orphaned him. And it's like, ugh. But I don't know if he was just going to distance himself from Colin and say, like, right, we can't get intimate, or whether he was going to try and tell him the truth, but he can't. Like, you care for him so deeply, and you kind of find yourself in this effed up cycle of, I mean, Frenchie punishes himself. Like we learned in season 2 about how he punishes himself for not being there for his friend Jay and how that haunted him and how he never shared that with anyone. Just, I mean, Frenchie's past has been something we've dived into a little bit here and there, especially last season with Nina being the one that's kind of been behind a lot of the, associated with a lot of the terrible things that Frenchie's done in his life that he regrets, you know? I mean, that in itself comes up later on, too, of if you really regretted it, if you really felt bad about it, you wouldn't have kept working and doing that line of work, you know? And then we know, like, Frenchie comes from his own jacked up circumstances with his dad, too, which kind of gets touched on in this episode. But either way, Frenchie ends up going, like I said, with Kimiko, who's hunting down the shining light, which I love. She's like, oh yeah, like, Huey helped me out with the CIA mainframe. I'm a hacker now. I'm like, once again, Karen Fukuhara is one of the most adorable human beings ever, dude. Oh, dude, that's so amazing. I like, cause she brings such a cuteness and charm to Kimiko, and it's just like, dude. Either way, they go to the facility. Problem is, Frenchie's high. I thought he was just like high on something. Should have figured the way they showed his eyes dilating. Was not expecting him to be on a hallucinogenic. To be fair, he wasn't planning on going on a mission until Kimiko dragged him along. But he kind of couldn't say no because Kimiko rarely asked for anything, and so she asked Frenchie to go along with her. It's like, well, I can't. Like, I got to be there to kind of help you, especially considering how important this is to you. You want to stop the shining light from doing what they did to you, like they're going to do to other children. You know, and you want to save and help. And so they show up at the facility. She proceeds to kill people, and Frenchie is tripping balls. At one point, seeing her face melting, seeing these giant, God, what would you call them? Like those bathtub duckies, like flying out of the dude's neck and everywhere. As Kimiko's killing, like having a little bit of a noir moment. This episode is just like, once again, I love how this universe like plays with that. You got a little bit of that in Gen V with how Sam handle stuff, him and the puppet thing. So I love that this depiction. It's like one dude she like stabbed in the head and like bubbles. It was a whole beautiful twisted sequence. But then it got dark with Frenchie seeing, you know, not only Colin but his dead family, and also being haunted by Nina, who's just kind of like, right, this is who you are. Like, you are a killer through and through. You want to blame me. Like, sure, you might have been working for me, but you didn't put up much of a fuss or fight, you know? And also, on top of all this happening, he wasn't there to back up Kimiko. Kimiko soloed everyone there except for one person, which I think that's the girl from Kimiko's flashbacks like we got like last episode, because she has a scar across her face. I'm assuming Kimiko gave that to her. Now, I wonder, was she someone like, I wonder, did they grow up together in the shining light, and maybe like they were kind of like family to each other, and maybe she feels like Kimiko abandoned her. It's like, cool, you managed to get out. To be fair, Kimiko probably, it might be a thing of Kimiko never came for her. It's like, yeah, you managed to get out. To be fair, the shining light still had you when the boys found you. So it's not like you were out and about. It's like you were found, but all this time later, you, even though you've been free and fine, you just kind of let the shining light exist. To be fair, she dealt with them a little bit in season 2, but once again, that was only in correlation with, hey, I found my brother, I'm killing people associated with the shining light, because they did what they did, but this is the fastest way to potentially track down my brother. So there's that. But for the past, you know, in between season 2 and 3, she probably hasn't really dealt with anything with them. Same thing for 3 and 4. Once again, it's about confronting the past. So I'm assuming that's someone that was almost like a sibling to her, or maybe a best friend that feels abandoned by her, because there was spite in her like trying to go after Kimiko. I wondered if I don't know if she knew that Kimiko's a soup. Doesn't seem like she herself is one. Because she was stabbing up Kimiko, but she didn't really say anything at the time. So either she already knew, or didn't, you know. Because they might have also fought to see, because they were probably trained up to see who was going to get the, because we never actually found out when Kimiko got I was about to say the compound V. We know it happens at such a young age, but it's like, was she in a situation like Zoe, which when she got kidnapped, as her and her brother when they were young, was she injected then, or did she get it as an adult? That becomes the thing, because like we saw her, like I said, in that tiny bit of a flashback, like fighting and training. So part of me wonders, like, was it a competition to see whoever comes out on top gets it, and maybe Kimiko came out on top and got it. I don't know. So that's going to be an interesting circumstance to see where that storyline ends up going. But the sad thing too is like Frenchie's not opening up to her, but he's like, why? We shouldn't have to tell each other everything. We're not joined at the hip. He's like, are you going to tell me about that girl that we met? He's like, cool. So if you got nothing else to say, I'm gonna go over here and get high, because we can't help each other with these circumstances. Our past is for us to deal with. No one else can. Because in Frenchie's mind, it's like, what's the point of talking about it? I did what I did. No, because he also doesn't want to be left off the hook like the season 2 situation. So it's like, I don't want anyone trying to forgive me, especially because Kimiko's done some stuff she's not proud of. I'm sure that kind of associates with that past as well. But it's like, she's not going to judge Frenchie for it, you know? I mean, how much she knows. Well, no, because I'm about to say she knows about. No, she doesn't know a lot about Frenchie's past, because like she got a lot more like understanding of Frenchie and everything because of that episode in season 2 at was it St. Grove, the hospital place for the soups and stuff. My point is, like, I don't think she judged Frenchie because of what. I mean, to be fair, she's also carried out hits for Nina in season 2 because of that, you know, because of her brother's death. So I could easily see her not judging him, but it's like, I don't want to be forgiven. I don't want to just be let off the hook. Like, no one's forgiveness is, you know, once again, guilt is your own thing you're going through. No one can really alleviate that for you. You kind of have to do that for yourself. So all the while this is all going down, MM is trying to, once again, rein everything in, getting help from A-Train, because he knows, like, right, A-Train can be flipped. It's like, well, you thought A-Train could get flipped before, and that led to Alex Supersonic getting murdered, so. But now he's even more on the outs. Like, this whole thing has eroded him even more, because, like, that was pre his relationship with his brother being going through irreparable damage. Because now his brother wants nothing to do with him. He can't have anything to do with his nephews. He's like, he has a lot of guilty conscience over a lot of stuff related to Vault. So I said Vault instead of Vault. Either way. He initially wanted nothing to do with it, but MM, once again, does see it inside of him, like, right, you do want to do good. And yes, doing good can get you killed, but it's like, yeah, look at you, but you're still standing here. He's like, because the dark circles under your eyes shows to me that you're not eating, you're not sleeping, because you've got so much guilt over all of this. So, which also feels, in particular, too, because it seems like, I don't know if that was just kind of like a throwaway thing just because maybe Laz Alonso just lost weight in general, but maybe it's a thing of maybe he's going through some stuff that he, like the character of MM's going through some stuff that he's not eating properly and stuff like that. Maybe not. That's what I was wondering if there was kind of parallel to be drawn there or not, but maybe not. But because of that information they got from A-Train, it ended up being MM and Huey going to a meeting place for Victoria, who's got her own circumstance to deal with because Bob is trying to like out every person in like some government position that has ties to Vought, but also he makes it clear to her like, oh yeah, going forward we're going like kind of a very anti-superhero approach, and like, yeah, there's celebrities and stuff like that, they can't have positions in government and stuff, which she's kind of smiling, and it's just like, well, you're kind of playing your hand, aren't you, Bob, making it clear to her that you know about her being the head popper. I mean, she might have already had her thoughts, but she probably is like even more clear. It's like, right, she can't make a move against him now until he fully gets the presidency, and then like put herself in a better position to pop him later on. So, because they're still in the campaign phase, right? He hasn't become president. It's still like, I forgot. Yeah, it's still in the campaign phase. So, but like, she's not going to do anything to you yet because she still needs you. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in that regard. But either way, I love how this meeting's going down while they're practicing the Maeve on ice whole thing. So it's like, cool. You thought the I was about to say, didn't they have a musical in this as well? Because wasn't it like paralleling? I don't know if it was done on purpose because of filming and stuff like that, but it was like paralleling like the Hawkeye musical. I was like, what now? The boys, like, what was the musical about? When it, I don't remember now. Wasn't there a musical last season that kind of like coincided with like Hawkeye's musical? I don't remember now. Or was it some other show I'm thinking of? I swear, because it was something superhero related, so I'm like, it had to be The Boys. I don't think anything else I was watching fit that. I just don't remember what the musical angle was about. But either way, another thing. I mean, the difference is this one's on ice. So yeah, that's really interesting. Which, oh my God, was that horrendous how that whole situation ended. Literally, so many people walked away dead or maimed. There was the main person who was playing Maeve, got lasered in half. One person got their finger sliced off by skates. Another person had their throat slit by skates. It's just like, oh, that was it almost felt like the perfect excuse to make some secret. You didn't know that was going to, like, I figured Homelander might accidentally kill some people. He set off a domino effect that led to some death and maiming, but I wasn't expecting that just to be the bloody situation. I just thought like he'd mess up and kind of kill everyone there. I didn't know he'd. Yeah. They even set a fire to make it seem like, oh yeah, that's what happened. I'm like, well, some of those people got out, so either you killed them to keep them quiet about what went down, or you paid them off the hush. I don't know. Well, because you also don't want to leave any evidence that proves like, oh, this person was. Oh, it seems like they were cut in half. It's like, huh? So you probably burned all that stuff to make it seem like it was just a. I don't know. Or maybe you didn't even make a fire. You just said it was a fire and just kind of moved on. I don't know. But either way, going to the Victoria and it's Victoria, Sage, and Homelander, because they're trying to convince her to kind of side with them. It's like, right, it's going to benefit you in the long run, especially because she knows Bob is pushing the very like anti-soup agenda, and it's like, right, we could push the more pro agenda. In fact, Homelander's the one pushing for her to kind of out herself, specifically when she gets to the president's seat. Because they want also to make it so like any legislation that's pushing for soups out of the military or any government jobs, we kind of nix that. Every town has a soup type of situation. And then eventually like Homelander's like, right, once you get to the presidency seat, out yourself. And it's like, well, that probably won't go over well with a lot of people because it's like, well, you stood hidden the entire time. So there's that angle to it. But a lot of what Homelander said did still strike a chord because much like the continuous train of daddy issues, he's like, wow, Stan Edgar did a number on you. Why are you trying to do everything to still make him proud? Which is so interesting considering you yourself are in Edgar's shadow trying to measure up to who he was and how he ran Vought while you've kind of sullied it and kind of screwed things up in a lot of ways. But what he said still struck a chord with Victoria because there is some level of trying to be the person her pseudo-father wanted her to be, but also throwing Zoe into the conversation because it's like, right, do you want her to hate herself? Because like the way you operate, you've been raised to hate yourself, especially because her abilities. I mean, Marie's in the same boat. I think that's why she felt even more of a kinship where it's like, oh, I'm not so alone when it comes to powers. It's also sad too that her daughter has such a like very not so sellable ability essentially. So I wonder, like, and I doubt anyone knows that Zoe is a soup because that'd probably like look down badly upon on not only if she was outed as a soup, but it's also the thing of, oh my God, you gave your child Compound V. Like it'd be it hit her double fold with not only being a soup and hiding it, but also when people find out who you are, that probably have to out yourself as a bloodbender then and avoid doing any head popping to kind of spin that narrative. But at the very least, like that would just kind of be a negative against you for hiding, because some of your base might turn against you. Probably not. Just a lot of people probably call you a hypocrite, but then also, I mean, to be fair, there would be a lot of the super community that would be behind you because they believe you a little bit more about your perspective. But once again, you stayed hidden, so that'd be them against you. So it just a lot could work against her. But all of that was interrupted because Huey dropped a bead of sweat fell down because he was avoiding to make any noise. He even did a smart thing of turning off his earpiece because he knew like, oh, Homelander is superhero. But all he needed to do was smell that sweat, and he immediately recognized Huey, lasered immediately. So chasing after Huey, lasering the air ducts. But yeah, that shit show turned into what it did. So, but luckily A-Train came and saved Huey, and he's almost like, why? And it's like, well, it was kind of like an I owe you or thank you. Well, the thank you last episode was like, because you didn't help out my brother, so me helping you out is kind of a thank you. but it's like him wanting to do the right thing this time. It's like, oh, kind of sells the notion that A-Train might be a pseudo boy, which is part of the boys. I mean, which has kind of been something people wondered, like, would he ever, like, they were thinking it last season, some people were, but it's like, yeah, the whole turning supersonic over kind of nipped that in the bud, obviously, so. Oh yeah, a pretty big plot point I completely forgot to talk about was the Huey situation with his mom, as we explore that a little bit more. He literally talked to someone from the Starlight House, like at the beginning of the episode, I believe, trying to find out if there was any legal recourse that he could take, but nothing would really go in his favor with the whole situation. So it's kind of like the only advice the lawyer gave him was like, yeah, you just have to make up with your mom, which they get to that at the end of the episode. After everything that went down this episode, it was a hell of a day for a lot of people, Huey in particular, almost getting lasered by Homelanders. There's that whole situation, but he finally has a sit down with his mom. He's like, I was going to come in here, yell at you and fight, but I've had a hell of a day. I just need to know, why did you leave? And she opens up about it. She's very vulnerable, and I think it coincides with what we saw in episode 2 with her breaking down a little bit when Huey yelled at her, because she understands his frustration, but she had her reasons and we just didn't know them yet. And understandably, Huey didn't know, but it's like we find out the reason why she left is she had postpartum depression. And she said everyone told her it was going to be like, hey, it was a couple months and you'll be fine, and it didn't go away. And for her, she even said, like, I swallowed 40 Ambien and was just going to kill myself. And luckily I threw them up, but it's like, I'm not in a mental space to be a parent right now. It's just, I'm not good. She's like, I wanted to, she's like, I dropped you off to school and then I just left. And he's like, but why didn't you ever reach out? She's like, I did, but your dad just like stopped me when I tried to reach out over the years, because he's like, right, he didn't want me. Well, for one, he was going through it too. He was figuring stuff out. He was hurt because, once again, it wasn't just Huey that was left. So was his dad. And it also becomes a situation of, eventually I just stopped trying, because she recognizes the pain he was in, and she didn't feel like there was any wiggle room for that. But maybe enough time passed that she was able to finally, I mean, it might be a thing of Huey's dad reached out when he was finally ready. After everything that was going on, maybe he was, because we don't know how that whole situation started. So at the end of the day, she's not even asking for Huey's forgiveness. She's like, I know I don't deserve that, but I just want you to know, I'm sorry, Huey, that I hurt you. And I think this was nice and healing that Huey needed. I mean, this is years and years of trauma, just like everyone else has got years and years of trauma, finally kind of finding some closure to some extent, because now he understands his mom better. Because at a young age, you wouldn't, like, because once again, he was like 6 when his mom left. He wouldn't have been able to understand that. Even as a teenager, he probably wouldn't have been able to understand that. Now as a full-grown adult, sure, but it's like, she didn't know what could help, and she probably felt like something was broken inside of her, and it's like, maybe I wasn't kind of meant to be a mother, and me staying, if I'm not hurting me. Because Huey was like, right, you were the fun parent, like, why? I didn't even know you were sad. She was like, because I hid it. I never wanted you to see me like that, so that's kind of a very heartbreaking and very open moment that they had, and I'm so curious to see where that ultimately ends up taking us. This was a step in the right direction, and hopefully Huey's dad comes out of this okay, but it seems like him and his mom, at the very least, it is kind of sad that it takes a tragedy to kind of reunite this family in this regard. And hopefully, Huey's dad makes it through. We don't know what the lasting effects of this could be, whether he'll be okay, whether he won't be. The doctor's kind of feeling like he probably won't be fully okay functioning in a lot of capacities, but what happens if he wakes up? What happens if he doesn't wake up? And those decisions come down, especially because she has power of attorney, but it is still going to be a family decision. Huey's been there more than she has, so there's a lot of layers and elements to that. I'm curious to see how that plays out going forward. Some very, very interesting developments. I believe that's me covering the entire episode. I'm probably missing some stuff, but I do apologize if I have. I'm very excited to see where the next episode takes us. Obviously, going forward, it's going to be week to week for the rest of the season, so I'm excited to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.